You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Welcome back. Esther chapter 7 is all about the showdown.
Yeah.
The queen risks everything and justice hits hard, man. So it's going to be a wild one. I'm super excited about today. I'm Jeff, and this is Wesley.
Yeah, good to be back again.
And we are so glad to have you, Wesley. Before we jump into the Bible study part of it today, Desiree gave us a really interesting moment here in this first piece. And it's, I can't believe that actually happened. And here's what it says. Welcome back, Wesley. To get to know Wesley a little better, let's have him tell a story that's so weird or random, people think it's made up. The weirder, the better.
Oh, man. I've got so many of those. Yeah. What's going to be
I would imagine.
Just crazy things that have happened.
Yeah.
I remember some years ago, we took a trip to New York. It was with a tour company. Mm-hmm. And literally everything on that trip was a disaster. The bus looked like, I might get in trouble for this, but you know the Rosa Parks and not sitting on the back of the bus? That's what the bus looked like.
Okay, yeah. It was an old...
this bus was ancient.
Greyhound. Yeah.
And everyone's looking like, are we really getting on that? And so we get on this bus, and it's just, it's old. Halfway through the trip, the engine goes out.
Oh, no.
He got it back working, but now the AC doesn't work, so we've got all the windows. It was one thing after the next. We get to, we were going to New York. We get to New York. We're sitting there in front of the hotel. They have no record of us, and the tour company arranged all this. No record of us being there. It was a complete disaster.
No.
Yeah.
So it was some kind of discount trip, man.
Yeah, and we just
some guy in the 7-Eleven parking lot selling the trip to New York City.
it was not good. Yeah, like everything was a disaster about that trip.
Okay. Note to self: don't go on trips with Wesley
or that tour company. Unless you like ancient buses.
That's funny. So for those listeners who don't know, Wesley Woods and we get to work together along with Chris. He works with us. We all work at the same church, Heritage Church. And you've been in ministry a long time. How long have you been?
So I first became a minister in 98.
Wow.
1998. And then I went from minister to, I think, assistant pastor, then to lead pastor. And then I came over to Heritage.
Yeah. Well, it's been great, man. Wesley and I, we have we try to team up against our executive pastor, Chad Asman, as often as possible. And we try to hold Chris Sarbaugh back as much as possible from just running amok. Yeah. Right. So, that's great, man. We're great allies together. It's a lot of fun to work together. Okay, so that was one story. Do you have another story? Do you have another crazy one?
Oh, man. So that was the New York story. Then, also related to New York, you meet some of the most random stars in New York.
Oh, yeah.
So we've met a lot of stars, like in, there's a guy who's an actor, producer. We met in the elevator in the hotel. We met an ex-NBA guy at a theater before. I mean, just you bump into, but in New York, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
You know, here, it's like, oh my goodness, that's so, in New York, it's like, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's big.
There's another celebrity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It turns out they're just normal people.
Yeah, they're just normal people and
just way richer and expect better service.
Yes.
Well, talking about way richer and expecting better service.
Yeah.
We're talking today about the king.
Yes.
And the queen. And one of the king's advisors, a guy named Haman. Mm-hmm. So to catch everybody up, we've been going through the book of Esther. And a couple of interesting things. Esther is the only book in the Bible that never says the name of God in it, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. But you see God's hand through the whole thing. Yeah. You see people of faith trusting that God is in control, even though, his name is never mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's telling the story. We've been kind of going through all of the Israelites have been in exile for quite some time. God had said, you're going to be in exile for 70 years. Some of the kings began to allow them after that 70-year period to go back to Jerusalem if they wanted to, but some stayed.
Yeah.
And Mordecai is one of those, and his family is one of those that stayed, along with his his adopted daughter, Esther. She was a niece, and her cousin, whatever. And then she winds up winning a beauty pageant because the king gets mad at his queen and he makes her the queen. She's incredibly powerful. But then Haman gets more and more impressive. He gets more and more elevated in the kingdom and more full of himself. And at the same time, he hates Mordecai because Mordecai is an Israelite. He's a Jew. He won't bow down. He only bows down to God. And Haman hates it. So he finally gets the king to say, all right, let's just kill all the Jews. They don't respect us. Let's just kill them all. And we're going to have this massive genocide. And then after that, the king winds up discovering that Mordecai had saved his life from an assassination plot. So he's talking and he goes, what did we ever do for Mordecai? He said, nothing. He said, oh, well, we should do something fancy. So right then, Haman's walking in. He goes, Haman, what should we do for a guy that I'm just think is the best guy in the world? He goes, man, you should give him a fancy robe, put him on your own horse. You should send somebody through town out in front saying, this is what the king does for the people he likes. And he says, great, then I want you to call that out while you're walking Mordecai through the town. So this is just like the greatest humiliation. He's so mad, and it makes Haman even more angry. Well, during that time, Mordecai found out that Haman was trying to kill all the Jews. And he goes to Esther and says, hey, don't think that because you're the queen, you're going to be able to hide. You know, nobody knew she was Jewish, but she was trying to hide that. But he said, eventually, they're going to find out. They're going to catch you.
Yeah.
So he said, maybe God put you in this position for just such a time as this. And she said, all right, let's pray and fast about this for a few days, and then I'll go see what I can do for the king, with the king.
Yeah.
And then she said, hey, king, we're going to have a party. And he's like, great. The party sounds great. So that's where we kind of ended last time.
Which was great wisdom of her approach.
Right.
Of how she tried to do it. You couldn't just go before the king and different things like that. So, yeah. So
we just caught everybody up.
Yeah.
In just like 3 minutes, caught them up a whole week's worth of. You know what? If you haven't listened to the other ones, I just caught you up on everything we talked about all last week. I saved you 5 days worth of listening to the Bible, guys, in 3 minutes.
Or they can just watch the VeggieTale version.
Yeah, watch the. That's what Chris said that last week. Yeah, he kept talking about the VeggieTale version.
Yeah.
So here we are now in Esther chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. And on the second occasion, remember she threw two parties. While they were drinking wine, the king again said to Esther, tell me what you want, Queen Esther. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it's half the kingdom. Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king. Who would do such a thing? King Xerxes demanded. Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you? Esther replied, this wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy. Haman grew pale with fright before the king and queen, and then the king jumped to his feet in a rage and went out into the palace garden. Haman, however, stayed behind to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he knew that the king intended to kill him. In despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining. Just as the king was returning from the palace garden, the king exclaimed, will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes? And as soon as the king spoke, his attendants covered Haman's face, signaling his doom. Then Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai, the man who saved the king from assassination. Then impale Haman on it, the king ordered. So they impaled Haman on the pole he set up for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Wesley.
Yeah, that's good.
People tell me, man, sometimes I have a hard time reading the Bible. I can't track along. It's not very interesting. And I'm like,
this is very interesting. We've got ups and downs, and one of the things that just comes to mind, just as we get to the end of verse 10, is the fact of how God can make all things work out for your good. Yeah. And in the case of Mordecai, this looked bleak. I mean, Haman is after him, wants to take him out, but the very, what does it say? That Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai. So essentially, God took that situation and turned it upside down and worked it out for his good. And all the times, it won't make sense. A lot of times we try to make sense out of how or why God will do what he will do.
Yeah.
But we have to just have faith and trust that God will do what he said.
Yeah.
And stop trying to figure out God and how God's going to work it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we're just nosy. We just need to stay out of God's business. Let God be God. You have the faith. Let him be God and let him do what he needs to do.
Yeah, I have found myself praying this often in my life. I think the older you get, the more maybe mature you get with regard to how you view things, hopefully. And in things that in the past, perhaps I would have been nervous or worried about now, I just find myself saying, God, I'm going to do what I can do. Yeah. And you're God and I'm not.
Yeah.
And that phrase, God, you're God and I'm not. I'm going to trust you. Jesus said it, your will be done. Yeah. Right? Not my will, but your will be done. And that's really that idea is when I recognize, listen, I'm doing the best I can and God expects me to do the best I can. But ultimately he's in charge. And so he's God and I'm not. And then it really is interesting. God's sense of justice is pretty phenomenal. Yeah. Here Haman is planning to impale Mordecai on a 75-foot pole in his own courtyard, and instead God goes, no, I think that's how I'm going to dispose of Haman. Yeah. Right? For wanting to wipe out his people. So there's that. So there's a few things here. One, Esther has tremendous courage. And we saw this last week when she went into the king without being invited. Yeah. So even though she was a queen, he had, many concubines, all those things. He did whatever he wanted. She was the queen. She was the most favored woman in his life, but she still had to have permission. As a matter of fact, she was supposed to be summoned by the king. But if she needed to meet with him, she'd have to apply for a meeting. And then he would grant this meeting with her. But she didn't do that. Instead, she prayed and fasted for 3 days, and then she just walked into the king's hall. Yeah, which could have been very dangerous. Yeah, if he refused to lower his scepter, she would have been executed. Yeah. So the courage of that was phenomenal. But then here she throws two parties. The first party, they throw it, and the king says, "I'll give you half my kingdom." And she goes, "You know what? The only thing I want is for you to come back for another party, both of you." And he goes, "Oh, okay, parties are great." So then in the second party, it says that they had, drunk well. Yeah. And then she had the courage to now admit who she was for real. Yeah. Hey, my people are about to be executed by this guy. Mm-hmm. And meaning now, if the king preferred Haman over her, or if the king felt like he couldn't reverse his ruling on this, she was going to die with her people. Yeah. And maybe she would have been able to preserve it. So this courage, right? She risks everything in front of a extraordinarily powerful. And then I think we've seen an outrageously unpredictable king. What this guy does, just spur of the moment stuff, is very unpredictable. And so she shows a tremendous amount of courage in that. It's inspiring to me. Yeah, one of the themes here with that is the courage to do what's right when no one else is with you. Yeah. And I think about that, how just in our personal lives, it can be in a job situation, it could be anywhere. The courage to do what's right when everyone could be doing the opposite, or when no one is with you. You got to make the decision that, you know what, I'm going to have the courage to do what I know is right, no matter the cost. And that's exactly where Esther was. Yeah. She didn't wait for the perfect moment. She created it. Yeah. She created it with prayer and fasting and with the tools in her hands. Right? She was the favorite of the king. She was a beautiful woman. She threw a party as she would have done as a courtier anyways. Yeah. All this kind of, she used what she had. And then guts, right? Mm-hmm. So prayer, fasting, what she has in her hands, and guts. And she didn't wait for the perfect moment. She created it while she was trusting God. And I love that kind of initiative. And I love the point that you just made. There's no perfect moment. No, right. I think oftentimes we like to wait for the ideal circumstance, and that circumstance will never come along. Right, there never is an ideal circumstance for anything. You got to just do it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that she had the guts when he says, "Who would do something like this to you?" And she goes, "That wicked Haman." She called him out there, right? She called a spade in that moment. And here's Haman. He's playing political chess. Mm-hmm. Maneuvering and trying to, be slick. And sometimes we can get way too clever for our own selves. And then we get trapped in our own traps. Do you ever play chess? Did you grow up playing chess at all? Yeah, no, I wasn't. I was a checkers guy. I wasn't a chess guy. Well, checkers, you can do the same thing in checkers, but in chess, I loved chess, and I still do. I like to play sometimes. Yeah, it's the strategy. But and you have to be way out ahead, right? Mm-hmm. You're always planning ahead. And there have been many times where in my plan, I thought I was out ahead, and then I find out my opponent knows where I'm going.
Yeah.
They see my plan,
Yep.
and then they back me into a corner, and my own plan gets me in trouble and defeats me, right?
Yeah.
And this is what happens. He's playing political chess, and he forgot who's really in control.
Yeah.
God was many steps ahead of him, backed him in his own corner, and impaled him on his own pole, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing. So he goes from being honored to hunted, literally in one conversation.
Yeah.
And then how weak of a man is he when the king gets mad and he goes out into the courtyard just to think about, cool off a little bit.
Yeah.
And Haman falls down on her couch. Dude, you shouldn't be that close to the king's queen.
But I can just picture it. Have mercy on me, please.
Oh, yeah. But he's on her couch. He's on her bed begging her. And when the king comes, he goes, "You're going to assault her right in front of me?"
Yeah.
It's literally checkmate at that point.
Yeah. But what was funny about that, Esther didn't even correct it.
Yeah.
She just let the king go. And
Oh, my.
That's the funny part.
Yeah. And so I think a lesson to be learned from Haman, quite honestly, is pride always overplays its hand.
Yeah.
And Chris and I have talked about this several times in talking with our staff. We've been on this run over the last, and this, it's been a decade.
Rocket ship.
Just riding a rocket ship at Heritage Church. And we've seen thousands of people come to faith, and we've baptized thousands of people. And we don't have any room on Sunday mornings, and we've had to launch new locations. Our new location, we launched like how many months ago? 6 months ago?
Yeah,
7 months ago?
September-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had over 700 people this past weekend, right?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And so on a regular basis, and you've been in many of these meetings when we're with our staff, reminding them, listen, God's doing something special. And we have to stay holy. We have to stay humble. We have to stay helpful, right? Over and over and over again. God opposes the proud.
Yeah.
But he gives grace and favor to the humble. And I think a lot about, I remember one time Rick Warren talked about this. I was in a meeting out in California with him and a few other guys. And he mentioned, and then later on I heard him teach this on video. He mentioned he tried to learn how to surf.
Yeah.
And he said there's this big lesson in surfing that he just feels like it began to consume his life when he realized it. He said, I can go get training. I can practice. I can learn how to stand up and have my balance, and I can strengthen my muscles. I can learn how to swim really well. I can buy the right equipment. I can get on a good wetsuit. I can learn how to swim way, way out. I can learn how to ride larger and larger and larger waves. He said, I can buy the best board and I can polish it and prepare it. I can swim out until I'm ready to get on the largest possible wave I can ride, but only God sends the wave.
Yeah.
Right? And so even then, I can do all I can do, but humility says, I'm not the one that's actually creating the opportunity, God is.
Yeah.
Right? And so I do all I can do. And I see this is what you're doing with what you see with Esther versus what you see with Haman.
Yeah.
Haman's playing political chess and he gets burned. He's so prideful, and pride always outplays its hand. But Esther uses all the skills and tools she has, but she still fasted and prayed before this day.
Yeah.
Relying on God, I'm going to need you to send the wave. I'm going to need you to send the thing. And that kind of humility, God always responds to.
And it's something about timing.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned with catching the wave at the right time. She had the wisdom to know, kind of like the party situation. Yeah, we're going to do another party. She was able to navigate the timing correctly so that the situation could come out to her benefit.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do things and we have the wrong timing. So it can be a good idea, a good concept, but if you have the wrong timing, it just won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The timing is incredibly important. And Zarba and I have talked about this a few times, about the importance of diplomacy. And a big part of diplomacy is timing.
Yeah.
Right? That you do the right thing at the right time, the right way.
Yeah.
And it's possible to do the right thing at the wrong time and get the wrong results. It's possible to do the right thing the wrong way and get the wrong results. But if you can do the right thing the right time, the right way, then you're going to get good results. And that's what she did.
Yeah.
So there's so much wisdom in this. Mordecai should be proud as a stepdad, I think they're cousins. He's an older man. She's a young woman, but he helped raise her. He should be proud. And then how he challenges her through this book. He's encouraging her to do the right thing. He's encouraging her to be courageous. He's encouraging her all the time. And then he challenges her at the right moment to say, hey, maybe God put you in this position just for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And I think about that. You might feel like, the reality is this is a forced relationship. Mm-hmm. The king just went around and said, I'm going to pick the prettiest girl in the kingdom. All the girls have to come. She didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And then whether she wanted to be his wife or not, it didn't matter. He just took her, right? So this is a pretty, somewhat demeaning circumstance she finds herself in. Mm-hmm. Very demeaning circumstance she finds herself in. She's powerless. She has the opportunity for the pearls and the silks and all those kinds of things. But hey, who wants to be just taken by some man?
Yeah.
Right? Even the king. So there's this situation that she could have been bitter about every moment in this. But Haman said, maybe God allowed this in your life just so you could save all of us.
Yeah.
Right? What if you weren't the one there? And what if somebody else was there who didn't care about us at all?
What if it was the first queen?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You would die too.
Yeah.
So maybe God put you there. And I think about it, that she could have sat in the corner, resentful of everything that happened in her life up to that point, feeling like it was all a waste, like there was no purpose, and angry at everybody. Or she could take this challenge and step in. And I think there's a lot of people who say, well, I don't know how I can serve God. I'm an engineer, or I'm a business owner, or I'm a mom, or I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I really don't see how my life is ministry. I don't know how I can serve. And the reality is, what if God put you in that classroom for these kids right now so they could know Jesus?
Yeah.
What if God's whole plan was that you as a parent are raising the next Billy Graham? Mm-hmm. What if you're where you're at for just this time?
Yeah.
And if we would look at our life that way, it would give purpose to so much more of what we're doing. And then all we have to do is, I think we need the timing that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. We need boldness and courage, and then trust that God's going to do what God's going to do.
Yeah, and we can ask God for the courage.
Yeah.
If you don't have the courage, ask God. God, give me the courage, give me the strength to keep persevering and moving on, and He'll give it to you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I hope that this was interesting to you. We're going to keep going tomorrow on the Bible Guys, but thank you for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow.